All right, so good evening, everyone. I believe we can start now. So I want to officially warmly welcome you to our webinar session. Today we're looking at the 2025 national budget, fresh out of the oven, delivered by the Honorable Minister of Finance just yesterday. The purpose of this session is not to rehash everything the Finance Minister presented, but to really talk about the tax policies. And I'm sure that's why a majority of us are interested in this. I think for quite a while as a nation, we've got many people now really interested in politics in general and things that affect us as individuals. And this budget is quite unique because it touched on very topical issues and very touchy areas like e-levy. So I'll touch on all of those today, and then we'll see what some possible um, implications could be, and then maybe I'll make some recommendations that I think government could also bring on board in future. I'll start by quickly introducing all of us to today's session. If you're on social media, we're on social media as well. You can connect with us on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. We're on TikTok. We're on X, formerly Twitter. We're on Instagram. We are social as well. You can follow the MSL Business School and Tax Law GH, and you would not miss out on any future events we may be holding. So, quick recap, MSL Business School and Tax Law GH was a relationship. So, Tax Law GH is the tax and fiscal policy unit of the MSL Business School. So, if you see um, any of the accounts online, feel free to follow both. Um, they are run by the same persons, right? So, that's just a quick introduction. So, before we start, maybe you don't know what the MSL Business School does. You don't know who we are. First, time coming across us, we are utilizing the power of technology to train the next generation of business leaders. So we run programs on the ICAG. We are training the best tech-driven, future forward-looking chartered accountants and chartered tax practitioners in Ghana. We also run masterclass programs as well as on-demand training programs. If you want anyone to train your organization, your team, yourself on any tailor-made training solutions, you can just scan the QR code on the screen and you'd reach our team on WhatsApp directly, right? So that was just a quick get that out of the way introduction. We can now start today's business. By the way, this video recording will be available on our YouTube channel. So both for the MSL Business School and Tax Law GH, which search on YouTube, you find both channels. Feel free to subscribe. We should put these videos up sometime tomorrow. Okay, so what are we discussing today? Back to business. Um, if I didn't do that already, my name is Michael. Did I introduce myself? I think I did. My name is Michael. Michael Siaw Larbi. You can call me MSL, and I'll be your host for today. So would have an introduction, which I just did. And then I would do a high level overview of the 2025 budget. So, what are the issues? What are the thematic areas? What is the government's focus? What's the government's priority? Right? We'll touch on all of those. And then we will go deep dive into selected measures. So, I'll pick some of the revenue measures that I find very interesting. And then we would do some discussions around them, see the little history, where we came from as a nation and where we are today, and then I would present my personal wish list, what I feel government should have changed or proposed to change in the budget that they probably missed out, right? But the good news is it's still a budget document. A budget is just a proposal. It is not yet law. So between now and when the bills are laid before Parliament, there's still a whole lot of room for some changes to be made, right? And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. I like hearing from you. So if you have any questions, please stay to the end, and I'll be more than happy to take any of such. So all formalities out of the way, I guess we can start. So before we start, I am a big, big, big lover of disclaimers. So let's remember these are just budget proposals. Parliament will have to pass laws to give legal effects to these. In fact, all these things that were mentioned in the budget, they could actually go to Parliament and it gets voted down. It never becomes law and it dies in the budget document. Alternatively, they could send a completely different proposal to Parliament. So let's just keep this in the back of our mind. We are discussing budget proposals. We are not discussing law. So in no way, shape, or form should this be taken being effective today. Nothing here is effective. It is merely based on what the finance minister delivered to parliament just yesterday. So just a quick disclaimer, we are discussing the proposals and the budget, and it's not law. So the basis for today's discussion will be the materials from the national budget, and obviously other relevant tax laws, which I put together in the course of preparing for this session. And then final disclaimer, all the information here to the best of my ability will be 100% accurate. Please remember that this is just for information or education purposes only. Nothing mentioned here should be taken as representing professional tax. If you need tax advice, please do well to consult your own tax consultant. And I'm sure that should make everybody here really happy, right? So that's about it. Let's start with the high level overview of the proposed measures. I'm not going to bore us with the fiscal policies, the monetary policies, the sectoral overview. We all heard that. My focus, like I said, and like you saw before you joined, is we are looking at the tax revenue measures mainly, right? So what was the theme for the budget? And I think this kind of sets the ground rules. It kind of builds the foundation, right? So the finance minister said the government wants to reset the economy of Ghana, or the economy of the Ghana we want. So I'm sure during the election period, we all heard the word resetting, resetting, resetting. So this budget is supposed to do a reset. So that should kind of be at the back of our minds. Many of these policies here or these proposed changes, some of them are just so we can say we have done a reset. First point, right? Every national budget, both full year budget and the mid year reviews, typically have a theme, right? And the theme kind of underpins what the government wants to do or achieve in that budget. Before we start, a quick recap in case you are not a finance person, you're not an economics person, you're not an accountant. Like, what is a budget? Basically, in public sector circles, a government needs money to run the economy, right? So we call that revenue. Now, when the government gets their revenue, they spend on different areas. You call them expenditure. So two keywords here, revenue expenditure, right? So the budget is just a document mandated by law, not to bore you with the details of the constitution, the PFM Act regulations, right? They mandate the government to present a budget. Now, typically, this is done close to year end around November, but in exceptional circumstances like election years, we have a whole system where government is given something called expenditure in advance appropriation. It's like have this amount of money and spend before your full budget is ready. So the new NDC government has now finalized their budget, which is why we have a presentation in March. Just to give you like an overview. So if later this year you see the 2026 budget being read in November, don't be confused, don't be surprised. It's because we are back to normalcy, right? I hope that kind of clarifies. So that was just like an overview why in some years, like election years, would have the reading not following the normal economic calendar or the fiscal policy cycle, right? So that's about it for that. I'll go straight into the taxes that are supposed to be eliminated, and I'll start with those that have a short-term focus. By short-term focus, what I mean here is these are changes we expect to see in the coming months. When I say coming months, roughly a time span of less than 6 months. Now, like I mentioned when we started, bills will be laid before Parliament and we'll see some laws amended. I'll touch on some of these one short. So, for example, for the withholding on lottery winnings, it is embedded within our income tax Act 896. So, we have an amendment to Act 896 to remove the requirement for the 10% withholding on lottery winners. Now, what is happening here is government is saying um, anyone who involves themselves in sports betting and wins from their stakes in betting or lottery activities. For some time now, since the law was amended, they've had to bear a 10% withholding tax on their winnings. So when you win, let's say you stake on Manchester United versus Liverpool, right? I don't know, right? And let's say you predict that Man U will win, and Man U actually does wins, like you get a 10% deduction from whatever you win or you get from the betting company. So they pay you 90% of your winnings and they keep 10%. Government is saying that it is an unpopular policy So they are taking that away. Now, I'll touch on this briefly. There's been lots of research studies that have suggested that actually betting taxes have a very funny way of working. And I'll tell you why. If someone is in quotes addicted to betting, I don't think 10% stops them. I mean, if someone does the math and they can put in 10 CDs and win a million CDs, I don't think just taking 10% stops them from staking the bet. So the point was that this 10% wasn't stop people from betting. And when government is designing taxes or introducing taxes, the point is we need something called a policy design or a policy design framework. You need to have a basis on which you are introducing those taxes. For example, why did we introduce a 10% betting, like bet winnings? Is it because we wanted to discourage the act of betting, or is it because we just needed extra money? I think at that point, Ghana needed extra revenue. That was it. It wasn't about discouraging the act of betting. Because if you wanted to discourage, we're talking about 50 thereabout. I think a rate of 50%, I'm not suggesting that, so please don't quote me anywhere, right? A rate of 50%, for example, would discourage someone because, like, if I'm going to stake 10 CDs and win 1,000 CDs and I'll only get 500 CDs, I'll think twice, right? But if I'll only lose 10%, it doesn't have the disincentive in what economics, right? So that's the first one. Government is scrapping this. In terms of reset, and I believe this is just one of the policies the new government wants to take off, just to check off a box to say, we said we would do it and we've done it. I think this is just one of the policies that are to score political points. But either ways, I think it makes two group of people happy. Number one, those engaged in sports betting and those who are loyal to the current party, because then it means manifesto promise have been what have been kept. But I think one other thing we should look at, which they were silent on, is the tax on gross gaming revenue. So the betting companies themselves have to pay a 20% tax on their GGR, which is a gross gaming revenue. It's quite high. It's more like paying tax on your gross profit because it's like your revenues less your payouts, right? And that becomes like their tax for the year. It's quite punitive. They do not get to take out actions which other businesses can deduct before making such payments. So I think government needs to look at that framework again and then maybe have talks around that. So if they want to still do a tax on GGR, then it should be, let's say, a reduced rate on GGR, not 20%. Right? So that's just on that. The next thing I'll look at here is the e-levy. I'll touch on e-levy into a lot of detail shortly. Long story short, nobody loved e-levy. I didn't, you didn't. I don't think there's a single person here who enjoyed paying e-levy. So good news, e-levy is gone. Good riddance to whatever they say after that, right? So e-levy is gone for good. And I think that is something that is a welcome change. Emissions levy, I'll touch on that into a lot more detail. Now, Ghana was never ready for this levy when it was introduced. And even today, we still are not. You need a whole policy overhaul to introduce what we call environmental based taxes or carbon linked taxes, right? Now, I'll talk about some history here when we get to that slide shortly. We've tried, but we always do hit and miss. So I think we really need to sit down as a nation to design a proper policy around carbon taxes, emission taxes, and all of those, right? Then VAT on insurance, funny one. So historically, Act 870 being the VAT Act has had an exemption for some selected financial services, generally, broadly speaking, right? So an amendment was introduced sometime a year or two ago, 2 years actually now, to what make non-life insurance non-exempt from VAT, right? So this policy suggests that are they only going to touch on motor vehicle insurance? Because the exemption is on non-life generally, which is all insurance policies that are non-life insurance policies, right? So would need further clarity. Typically for proposals like this is the bill to parliament that kind of gives us the clarity we're looking for. This other one here, I wonder what the impact really is. So it used to be 3%, by the way, this one. There was a 3% withholding tax on processed precious minerals. This is for payments to small scale miners, right? This was halved to 1.5%, and they are scrapping the 1.5% withholding. To be fair, revenue impact on the state was not anything material. So this is something they can take off the books and then they should be fine. So high level, these are some taxes short-term focused that the government intends to as they use the word scrap. So remember, we'll no longer have a withholding on betting winnings. There's been some commentary in the public space. The NPP is saying they never implemented this, right? But if you drill down deeper, when the law said lottery winnings, it covered like lottery as in NLA, National Lottery Authority winnings, and then gaming commission winnings. So gaming commission winnings apparently were implemented. So on Twitter yesterday or X yesterday, some investors shared as I mean like sports betting enthusiasts shared screenshots of their winnings net of taxes, right? So we saw that indeed it had been implemented, but the NLA regulated lottery never got implemented based on backdoor discussions GRA had apparently. So if you heard the former finance minister from the NPP side saying they never implemented, I think it got lost in interpretation, right? So they are trying to interpret lottery literally, like lottery as in lotto, but the law uses lottery winnings to cover sports betting winnings as well. So let's be clear here. What the finance minister is kind of hinting at scrapping that on sports betting winnings. But we are yet to see if indeed those scrap lottery winnings as well, because in any case, it never got implemented from the look of things, right? Just to clarify on that part of it. Then regarding tax administration and some compliance reforms, there's one very interesting one I'll spend some time on when I get to that slide. So there's this claim, right? And I think maybe the accountants and economists here, we can just reason together. So the finance minister claims that if they reduce the general refund account ceiling by 2 percentage points, they are going to make more money. But I think what I'm going to do is show us what the law actually says, and then we'll see whether this had to be said in the budget anyways. Right. So critical analysis of the law as it currently is, we'll find out that, well, maybe we did not need to even mention this. Because it's not like it's a ceiling you have to hit. It's a ceiling means that's how high the roof is. So you can jump that high, but you don't need to jump as high, right? So I'll touch on that. But yeah, the finance minister said the reason why they can comfortably scrap e-levy and scrap the tax on betting is because they're going to make extra money from the refund account, right? But there's a theory. You can't create money from thin air. Whatever enters a refund account is money we already had. It's not new money. So if you lower the ceiling, anyway, we'll come to that. Right. Then the finance minister said they're going to amend the RAA, which is the Revenue Administration Act of 2016, to introduce sweeping policy changes to ensure compliance and to close some loopholes. We are yet to see what this entails. Tax education campaign. As a nation, right from when I was a baby till now, we've always been saying we'll do this, right? So I want to see how different this will be this time around. We are going to educate um, the citizenry on their tax obligations to encourage compliance. I think Ghanaians generally, we are at a place where we want to see our taxes put to good use and we'll be more than happy to pay, right? So I don't think education alone will cut it. But then again, let's see how they're going to roll this out. It will be anything different from previous years. Then we'll touch on quarterly tax dialogues. The minister mentioned that we'll have periodic dialogue, discussion sessions, forums, like to discuss different issues. And all of these are geared towards encouraging voluntary tax compliance, getting people to understand what taxes there are to pay, how to comply, what exemptions you can enjoy, what reliefs are there for you, right? So these might not directly bring in revenue, but this second one here, this third one here, and this fourth one here are supposed to encourage people to be more compliant, right? Whether through forced compliance through the law or voluntary or encouraging voluntary compliance, like people to know more about their obligations. These are things that the finance minister has said. We are here to see this in a lot more clear format once this is laid before Parliament. Then other revenue reforms. I'll touch on the first one. Energy sector levies. Please remember we are doing a high level overview. I'll spend time to touch on the details in a few minutes. So the energy sector levies are going to be restructured, right? We're going to see three of them merged together with the others remaining. And we have a few questions I would probably have thinking aloud and asking there. But yeah, we would see how this would play out. It seems we are going to neglect sanitation and pollution. And I don't think that is a good thing, knowing how dirty some parts of Accra and in Ghana, in general, Ghana, right, can be in some particular times. Then we have the growth and sustainability levy. There's a little bit of clarity we need from the minister here, but I'm sure the amendment bill would clarify this. So what the budget said was they're going to increase GSL from 1 to 3% of gross production of mining companies. Now, let's remember category B, I'll come to that shortly, don't worry, is for mining and the upstream petroleum companies. So are they going to have a different like category BA, BB, or B1, B2, right? Where we separate upstream petroleum from mining. And it wasn't an oversight because the budget actually said to take advantage of windfall from gold sales or mineral price increases, right? So it kind of suggests they are looking at minerals and not oil. Now, there are so many challenges when it comes to implementing this. I'll touch on them shortly. For example, we have what we call stability or stabilization clauses. A government cannot just decide to increase tax rates for those in extractive sectors because they are very special people. They bring in so much money. We have to make them so many promises just to get them to bring in their capital, right? So there'll be some challenges to see what happens here. Then government is saying they are going to extend this to 2028. I'll touch on the history of what I call the profit-based taxes. And I think the answer is simple. See, if government needs this money, we should just stop these games, right? And make it an entrenched tax. Because I'll give you the history of where we started from, where we are today. It is not a new thing, right? From when some of us were in primary school, right? Government has been playing games, changing the names year on year, and it's not a particular party's thing. Both parties play with these kind of taxes, right? So we pay a corporate tax, and there is an extra layer of PBT-based tax. PBT here meaning profit before tax, right? It just imposes undue burden on taxpayers, and I think it's an easy and very lazy way to collect taxes, right? Yeah, it's what it is. Then there's another corporate called the special import levy. I kid you not, it seems we are never going to see the end of this because just when you think SIL is going to die, somebody amends the SIL Act. I'll show you the history of the SIL Act, and you realize that, well, we might as well just say it should be in the law till 2070 something, right? Because it's never going off our books. Then road tolls, they claim they're going to use technology driven system to improve collection accountability. Road tolls in general was a bad idea. So this is a welcome change. I think it's all about how the implemented this time around, right? So once this is formalized and legalized, we should start seeing some of our major roads tolled again in the coming months, right? So these are some sweeping reforms that the minister has suggested, and we'll discuss some of them in some detail. Then we have other revenue measures. There's one that is almost guaranteed to be in the budget every year. So we have a national daily minimum wage, which is to ensure that anyone who earns below minimum wage should not pay tax. It makes sense, right? We want to support vulnerable populations. If you're a poor person earning below minimum wage, your income is exempt from what? Taxation. So we are going to review the nil PIT band to make sure those who earn below minimum wage pay 0% tax on their income, right? So that is a foregone conclusion. We amend the Fair Share of Act 896 to ensure this is done, and it's quite a simple one. Then the government seems to be quite serious on non-tax revenue generation. So we are going to have an overarching legislation, yet to see how that would look like, which should enhance non-tax revenue. So we are saying that we've taxed our citizens enough. Let's look at other ways to raise revenue that are not pure taxes. So, in line with this, Minister has said there will be some law amendments on NTR related laws, and they'll develop a national NTR strategic policy or framework to strengthen the legal and regulatory regime in general. Then, property rate collection, it's almost becoming something I see in every national budget. We're going to reform property rate collection to boost revenue. We are tired. I think, and admit that in the previous financial years and a year ago, we saw some increased effort with GRA assisting local governments generally to collect property rates in different jurisdictions in the country. So you probably have been at home and then someone approached you at home and gave you a bill to pay. Or you got an SMS that your property has been rated at this amount to come and pay this amount of money, right? So generally, um, Finance minister has said for the thousandth time that we are going to see property rate collection witness an overhaul to boost revenue from this area. We have to see how that is going to look like in right. So these are like high level overviews, and I went through them quickly because for everything here, I think everybody kind of had it yesterday, right? I want to spend time on the ones that are quite interesting. Then VAT. Let's not forget that these are not going to be short term. It is subject to the IMF technical assistance. So these are more like the finance minister and the NDC government's wish list. So let's not confuse them, right? If you read the budget carefully, these are not going to be immediate. So, for example, they can take bills to parliament to kind of like implement all of these ones. Sports betting winnings can literally go tomorrow if the bill is passed through all three stages tomorrow, right? E-levy emissions, they can all go to. But these ones on VAT, you know, here's the just a basic 101 level discussion. If you owe someone like the IMF, right? Anybody in general, in fact, if you owe anyone, you are their slave, generally, right? So because we owe somebody, that somebody has given us certain conditions, certain parameters we have to meet. So we can't just be scrapping taxes without their approval. Does that make sense? Generally, right? So you may wonder, but we are a sovereign nation. Why don't we just scrap VAT? Like for. The point is, VAT is a significant revenue handle. It brings us more money than direct taxes generally, right? So if you scrap some of these ones and you don't implement them well and it backfires and your revenue takes a nosedive, you are because you don't make your lender happy, right? So generally, what the finance minister said is sometime April this year, they want to start meeting with the IMF technical assistance mission team, put this before them. So this is what government wants to do, right? If they agree, then we have the go ahead to implement them. Now, personally, these are things I'm very interested in because we've had the worst possible VAT regime since 2018, 17, thereabout to date. Worst ever in the history of our young republic, right? Because what happened, anyone who is familiar with the story is we are paying for the 19 levy. I dare say we are the only African country in 2025, when COVID is gone, still paying a levy for COVID. Okay, it's called COVID-19 Health Recovery Levy. What are we still recovering from if China has recovered from the levy and I mean the virus and moved on, right? But Ghana is still recovering in 2025, right? So it never made sense, and it's quite fair that it's on the table to be scrapped in the next coming months, right? So that's the first one. And something that happened for anyone familiar with the matter is that we at the moment, we compute VAT on levies. So it's like you have NHIL, Get Fund Levy, COVID levy, and we have VAT on those. Never made sense, never will make sense. Anyone who defends the definition in the law still doesn't make sense, right? Finally, we've had the government saying we're going to reverse the decoupling of Get Fund and Get an NHIL from VAT and then make them stand alone. And that implies we are potentially going to get an input deduction. Now, when we say value added tax charge on value addition at each stage along the transaction cycle or the value chain, right? So why then do you call it a value added tax and then deny me from deducting some of the inputs that led to that value addition? So we had what we call a modified sales tax regime in Ghana, never a true VAT regime. Thankfully, it looks like pending IMF approval, we may go back to what VAT should be, the one we all know and love as Ghanaians, right? So that will lead to the effective VAT rate going down. They want to reverse the VAT flat rate regime, which I don't agree with. I'll talk about why shortly. And then they want to raise the registration threshold. I agree with this. Currently, all you need to do is 200,000 to have to register for VAT. It's too low, right? It's too low. We need to save some people from the burden of filing extra returns, like raise the threshold minimum 500,000 minimum, right? So that anybody who makes below 500,000 is not supposed to register for VAT, won't have to stress with VAT. So I'll not be surprised if they do 500,000 for point number 5 here, right? Then, as usual, they want to educate you and I a lot more so that we become more VAT compliant, right? That is what this set point here is going to look at. So these are the high level points the finance minister mentioned. um, just to bring all of us up to speed on what happened yesterday regarding the tax and non-tax revenue measures. Now, I'm going to do a deep dive into some of the measures, and then maybe we'll do some technical discussions. I think this is where I am more interested in. I'm going to start with this one. Let's analyze this closely, right? So, this is what the law says. So, I just took the law, all emphasis here, mine, right? So, the law says the minister shall set aside an amount of not more than 6% of total revenue. Um, when I learned English in high school, junior high, nursery school, not more than means, okay, wait, not more than 6%. Do we all agree that 1% is not more than 6%? 2% is not more than 6. 3% is not more than 6. 4 is not more than 6. 5 is not more than 6. So, do we really need to reduce the ceiling to 4? No. If you want to put 4 in the refund account, the law as it is now allows you to put 4 in the refund account. In any case where we actually put in exactly 6%. So, my confusion here, which is expressed by this very beautiful emoji here, is what is going on here? Hold on a second. Because the minister claims this will save us 3.8 billion Ghana cedis. How is it a saving if you are not forced to put all 6 there? Unless you're putting all 6 there. But once again, let's see how this plays out. Because the law also says that when the money enters that account, it's not lost, it's not missing, it's not gone. Where at the end of a calendar year, 69 or section 69, section 3, there's an amount outstanding as credit in the account, it shall be paid into the consolidated fund. So hold on a second. It means that even if I put all 6% in an account and I don't use all 6%, at year end, the money is available for me to use and then doesn't go to waste. Are you getting where I'm driving at? Anyone here who is? I mean, thumbs up reaction if you get where I'm going. I mean, like, okay, where's the extra money coming from? Right? Because first and foremost, it wasn't a forced ceiling. The law did not say the minister shall set aside 6%, or if they said at least 6%, then it's a problem. At least 6 means 6 and above, but not more than 6 means you could have been doing 1% every year and nobody would actually buy, right? But here we are. I want to believe there's something they have seen I haven't seen, but then again, these are my views. It doesn't represent any government's view. It is my personal opinion, right? So, well, let's see how this plays out. I'm going to reduce the ceiling to 4%, which they don't need to amend the law for anyways. And I'm a proponent of don't touch the laws too much unless you need to. Like leave section 69 alone. As it is now, you can implement this 4% without touching anything here, right? But let's see how we're going to save the 3.8 billion that is supposed to cover the gap for e-levy and the betting tax, right? But yeah, I'm sure, like I said earlier, these are just preliminary comments based on what I heard yesterday. Let's see how this plays out. And if there's maybe some actual technicality we are not aware of. What I'm thinking is the minister's thinking is that once you set aside that money, it's kind of like restricted fund for the year. So during the calendar year, you can't touch the money. So always available at year end. During the year, you can't touch it, right? If that is the point, fair enough, right? But let's see how it plays out. So this one has a big I'm wondering what they are talking about here, feeling, right? But that's what the first one is. So this is what is supposed to close the gap. So government is positive that without introducing any new taxes, they'll be able to use this extra savings to make up for the e-levy and the betting tax, 10% withholding, right? Okay. Then let's touch on the growth and sustainability levy. Now, I'm going to show, I've blurred out the irrelevant areas for now. So generally, this is a levy introduced in 2023 by Act 1095. There are 3 categories. If you're in category A, you pay 5% of your profit before tax as a growth and sustainability levy, right? Um, that is fair. So who are those in category A? Banks, non-bank financial institutions, insurance companies, telecoms, telecom companies, paying CST bureaus, inspection valuation companies, all of these guys, right? Literally, they pay 5% of their PVT. Now, category C guys pay 2.5% of PVT. Now, this is all entities not in A or B. So if you're not in A, you're not in B, right? then you pay 2.5% of PBT. Now, this GSL was supposed to end this year, 25. Government is saying they're extending to 2028. And I'll tell you why we need to like stop playing games with this law. Because like, what's the point? What I want to touch on here is the budget said 1% to 3% of gross production for mining companies. So my question is it affecting mining companies only? Is that the plan? Or did he mean to say, as in category B entities will all be 3%? Once again, is amendment bill to Act 1095 that will give us the answers to this, right? But for now, my interpretation is this is going to be 3% for the gross revenue, gross production of mining companies, right? So my question is, does the 1% remain for the upstream petroleum companies? We'll live to see. So here, I'm saying there should be a review, a look at the effect of stabilization clause to agreement. So for example, if you don't know what this means, if a mining company comes to Ghana, they bring all the investment capital. They want to do the reconnaissance, the prospecting, and all of that in Ghana to find out if there's gold and if they can mine in Ghana. Because it's so capital intensive, nobody wants to lock their capital in the country only to hear the next 2 weeks that the tax rate has quadrupled. Nobody would want that. So government gives some assurances, some promises, right, to the companies and says, you know what, I'm giving you this promise, heart on my chest, and my hand on my chest, if and when the tax laws change adversely, it will not affect you. I am protecting you. I am shielding you from all adverse changes. So the companies say, oh, well, that sounds good. I'm bringing my money, my people, my tools, my equipment, and they come to Ghana. So the challenge is this 1% to 3%. First thing is, even the 1%, not all mining companies are paying anyways. Some of them are stabilized, and there's been some back and forth with GRA. So the question is, if 1% did not yield the needed revenue, what makes you think 3% will for the very stabilized guys like your Newmont, your Anglo Gold, Ashantis, and the rest, right? Maybe government will try and negotiate with them because that's the only way, right? But going strictly by agreement, they are protected from having to what actually have to pay this because of stability, right? So let's remember that is it. This levy has three categories. For now, category A is fine, it's not changing. Category C is fine, it's not changing. B is where there'll be a change. And my question is it going to affect just mining companies? But I have a bigger question. Like, my question to the government is like, yo, what's up? As we say in Pidgin, like, what's happening here? Because let's start from 2001. And you realize it's just like the same thing is repackaged every year. From 2001, so this is not new. If you're wondering, it's not new, right? We had something called the National Reconstruction Levy in 2001. What were we reconstructing back then? But it's fine, right? So Act 597 came, National Reconstruction Levy, selected entities were paying. Then we rechristened, it became born again, went to church, gave its life to Christ, and became Act 785, National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. Again, the focus is the same. We're going to take corporate taxes and then we are going to impose an extra layer of taxes on your profit before tax. It's nothing new. Just to show you, this has been there since 2001. Like it just comes and goes in different ways, shapes, and form. Then it came back again in 2013 at 862, still NFSL, right? And you see, the first name was National Reconstruction. So we're reconstructing the nation. Then now wanted to do fiscal stabilization. So we want to stabilize the fiscal framework. Fair enough, right? Then that wasn't enough. When COVID hit and we did a financial sector cleanup, they said, oh, let's do financial sector recovery. So now the banks under Act 1067 are paying 5% of their profit before tax. Now the law says the Minister of Finance may review this at the end of 2024, Section 4 of Act 1067, right? The question is, because the law said may, they don't have to review it. And they've been silent. And today is 12th March. May is not shall in law, so the game keeps playing itself, right? Then in 2023, we got growth and sustainability levy. You know what they did this time? They're like, these ones are restricted. Not everybody was paying. So let's bring this new guy and bring everybody in. So I call it a special profits tax in Ghana, and history keeps repeating itself. So you may wonder, why is it so hard for government to let go? this is like a toxic ex you can't let go. So you see, here's the point. There's a simple reason it brings in so much money. Easy money that is. Like for no extra work done, government gets to make so much money. Arms folded, sitting in their sofa. Watch the numbers. So in 2022, we made some 693 million Ghana cedis from the NFSL alone. In 23, when we rechristened to GSL and added category C guys, we did 1.3 billion, almost 2x the amount. If you were the government, would you scrap this? No. So it's no surprise they've extended to 2028. So my point is, see, let's stop playing the games, right? Two proposals. Either we scrap all special PBT-based levies and increase the CIT rate, because currently CIT is 25% for general companies, 35 for mining companies. If you're going to do like 27% CIT general or 28 and do mining like 37 or 38, then we know, yeah, that's the CIT rate. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, let's stop these games as if it will go away in 25, because I can almost bet in 2028 whoever is minister then will extend the game. Because history 201 to 2023, come on, look at the number of years. It's not going to die anytime soon, right? Like, let's stop playing the games, scrap everything, and then increase CIT. But I think it creates compliance, or it simplifies compliance and creates certainty. So everybody knows in their minds that, okay, I am planning for 28% on my CIT for 5 years. If I'm an investor coming to Ghana, I would have been told that this GSL ends in 25, only to hear that, oh, sorry, you have a few more years to pay to 28. It doesn't help taxpayers. It is not in line with what Adam Smith said, that tax systems need to achieve one of the canons of what? Certainty. Proposal B is simple. They can also reduce the burden on the banks by removing the FSRO, because now banks are doing 5+5 generally. GSL and FSRO. It's not fair to the banks. Fine, the banks make so much money, but come on, they have investors also, they have shareholders, right? And we are not doing them any good. So we can remove FSRO and increase the GSL for banks only. So maybe banks will just do an extra 2% on their GSL. We've saved them some burden without burdening them twice, right? And then let's remove the sunset clause for the GSL and just say that it is subject to annual review for certainty. So we know that, okay, GSL is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Finance minister can review it every year. Then we know, like, we are stopping this amendment. Because the challenge is, if you're a student of taxation or you are a teacher of taxation, as I am, then you see every time you have to be teaching or learning different things. Because now, okay, it's ending 2028, then we're amending this one. Like, we are all tired. Just tell us the truth, right? We have GSL in our law. It's not going anywhere. We'll be happy. We lived with E-levy for how many years? We can do this, right? So I think for certainty, keep it in the. I just mentioned a clause that says that, okay, it is going to be subject to annual review or review every 3 years, something, right? But I mean, 201 to 2028, for sure, 2070, if the war has not ended by then, we'll still be paying GSL, probably with a new name. That's a trend, right? They'll give it a new name to make us feel like it's a nice thing, but yeah, it's not going anywhere. So that's what I have to say about the GSL. In general, it's a nuisance tax, but it brings us so much money. So it will be very hard for the government to let go of this, right? Let's come to the energy sector. They want to do some restructuring here. Now, this is going to be a little bit technical, but I try to make it as simple as possible. In very basic English, when you buy energy products, petrol, diesel, fuel, LPG, kerosene, you are paying for something you probably don't know. It's embedded in the price, but it's broken down to something behind the scenes at the back end, right? So I'm going to try and explain what is happening in the back end. So for when you drive to the fuel station, Shell, Total, Energies, Goil, and you buy some liters of fuel and you drive off, generally, you would have paid energy debt recovery levy, road fund levy, energy fund levy, price stabilization recovery levy, public lighting levy, energy sector recovery levy, sanitation and pollution levy, national electrification scheme levy. And many Ghanaians don't know they are paying all of this. So it's business as usual, right? But show you like so many elements, right? It's fair they are trying to consolidate three of them. I'll touch on them shortly. But generally, if you're looking for the details, I'll give you an example. So let's say if you take let's say petrol, you are paying 49 Ghana pesos for energy debt recovery levy, of which 5 pesos will go into what? Foreign exchange and the recoveries, 8 pesos to recover Tema oil refinery debt, and then 36 pesos for power generation infrastructure support in general. Then there is 20 pesos both on petrol and diesel for energy sector recovery or the Delta Fund. Then we pay 10%, I mean 10 pesos per liter of petrol and diesel on sanitation and pollution levy. Then you wonder, why is Accra still dirty? Or to be fair, Accra seems dirtier than after, like when we introduced this, it's like the debt has increased generally, right? So we also pay for that. There's 10 pesos for every liter of petrol and diesel you buy. We also have others like the road fund levy, energy fund levy, price stabilization recovery levy, public light, and then electrification scheme. Right. So in terms of the purposes, we have here, as you can see, energy debt recovery levies to facilitate debt recovery in the energy sector. Road fund levy, very obvious name, to support road maintenance activities, which is fair. Energy fund is to fund energy commissions activities. Price stabilization recovery is to stabilize petroleum prices for consumers. Public lighting is for your street lights, your traffic lights. Keep lights on in the cities. That's all really. So you are paying for that. So you may wonder, why is the street light in your area off? You are not using your levies well. And the energy sector recovery levies to recover some energy sector bills and charges. Sanitation pollution to keep our cities clean, make the air quality better, clean gutters, create drainage systems, all of those things. And national electrification scheme levy to make sure everybody in Ghana gets access to electricity. What is happening here? So the energy debt recovery levy, energy sector recovery levy called the Delta Fund, and sanitation and pollution levy will be merged into one. Why are they merging? To cater for the energy sector shortfalls and service the inherited debt service obligation. Inherited here means inherited from the old government or the former government. Now, I have a question. What is the plan B for SPL? That's the sanitation pollution levy, because we made 470.88 actual GRA collections for sanitation and pollution. If you are merging this to pay for energy debts, energy shortfalls, does that mean we don't care about sanitation again? So my question to the government here is like, what is your plan B? How do you plan to fund pollution? If your plan is to what? Move all of those into paying energy debt. It is fair. We are burdened with so much energy debt, but we need to also think of Accra because it's getting dirtier by the day, apparently, right? So that is just one thing we should think about. Like I said, once the bills go to Parliament, we'll get clarity on how this will be implemented. Now, this guy here, special import levy, and I have a very simple question: are we really keeping the SIL or not? Like, are we? Because it's more like another game of thrones, right? We are just amending laws. So look at 2013. We had the Special Import Levy Act. It has gone through so many changes, right? What has been happening, just like the GSL, whenever it's about to die, then they extend it. So as we speak today, it died in 2024. We are in March. Government says no, let's extend to 28. So then after this law, we get Act something of 2025. Do we have another year? So the proposal is simple. If we can't let go of this revenue source as a nation, why not just kill the sunset clause and insert a subject to periodic review by the Ministry of Finance clause? It creates certainty and frees up valuable parliament hours used for multiple amendments. The design of the SIL, in my opinion, is too simple to need this many amendments. It's a very basic law imposing a percentage on imported items, some imported items. Like, why does it need all of these amendment laws? Right. Already as a nation, our law system, the way we amend laws is in shambles, right? So many amendment acts. Hard to track unless you are really interested. Like, I have to go and look for all of these. It's easy to miss one of them, right? So SIL is too simple to have amendments. So let's just decide. in the 2025 amendment, no sunset clause, just leave it alone. Because if from 2013 to 2025 it is still alive, chances are it will still be alive 10 years from now, right? And it is not an NDC or NPP thing. This timeline you see here, thankfully, kind of spans both parties. And it looks like they both love the levy. So we can't blame any of them. They both love SIL. So they should just admit they're in love with this levy and then just extend it into perpetuity, right? So that is the point here. Then e-levy. I don't have any comments. I'll say it will be a lie to say you'll be missed, so I won't see ya. Bye for now. E-levy, nobody misses you. Yeah, good riddance. So generally, nothing to say here. Number one, it was poorly designed. Number two, it never really made sense. What were we taxing? Like, were we taxing the okay, certainly not the income for sure, but we're taxing the movement of funds. And this was a nation that said we're going to kind of encourage financial inclusion, get people to use money transfer, people should more, go cashless. And then when I decide to go cashless and I'm moving that cashless cash, you tax me on the cashless cash. It doesn't make sense, right? So yeah, I don't have any comments on e-levy other than thank you, God. We'll be allowed to say you'll be missed. I won't say you'll be missed. See ya later. Probably, hopefully never. And bye for now. It was 1.5% initially, later went to 1%. And it stayed at 1% till this government said goodbye to e-levy. So that's about it really for e-levy. Um, you are here and you'd miss e-levy. You can speak to the GRA behind closed doors so that maybe only you, they set up a system for you so you'll be paying, right? I don't think anybody here missed the levy at all. So goodbye to e-levy. As a nation, we need to focus on what? Digitization. And this levy was a wrong move right from day one. All right, so that's it for e-levy. No comment here. Then another one that seems like we are confused. So it's called emissions levy, right? And all I have to say here, it's a right tax, but poor design, wrong timing. In a in a perfect setting, it's a good tax, but Ghana is not ready for emissions levy. Do you know why? Like you live in a country where you are saying emissions from motor vehicles should be paying some amount. Okay, so if you use a car, let's say if your car is up to 3 liters, like in displacement, you're going to do 150 cedis per annum. Above 3.0, 300 cedis per annum. Cargo trucks, 300 cedis per annum. Now, we live in a country where we don't have a clear policy on electric vehicles. So it's more like I just punish everybody who drives. Do you get where I'm coming from? Like, it's a good tax, right tax, but poor design, wrong timing. Because in Ghana, I dare say over 90% of our cars, probably 95% plus, are actually what we call what internal combustion engine vehicles, ICEVs, right? So if you want to punish those who drive those cars, then just tell us we are paying an extra levy for driving. So it's not an emissions levy, it's a driving levy, right? Because like how many people in Ghana drive electric vehicles? And let's not forget that even the so-called hybrids, so you have Honda CR-V hybrid, they have an ICEV and there's a hybrid battery. So they don't qualify as what? Full EVs, by the way. So they're still going to pay this, right? So it's more like punishing everybody who had a car that used petrol, diesel, kerosene. You were just going to pay a levy, right? So right tax, poor design, wrong time. And I say this because like history always kind of repeats itself in Ghana. So in 2018, they introduced a certain levy called the luxury vehicle levy. Another tax, which was right tax, and actually poorer design and wrong timing. Because guess what? They said for that particular levy, it was for 2.95 liters and above for your car. You pay 1,000 cedis. So for a tax that was called a luxury vehicle levy, do you know a Range Rover Evoque P250 will not have qualified because of engine capacity? So you see, government has tried to tax engine capacity and not really find like a more sustainable way to raise revenue from the environment or from environmentally related matters. Because if you tell me my engine capacity is 2.9 liters, 3 liters and above, so I should pay a certain tax. Okay, if I don't drive the whole year and I park the car, did I pay the environment that year? No, I did not, but I paid. Do you get where I'm coming from? So it's not like a lazy way to just tax everybody. poorly designed, was never the right time, and that was the challenge. So the luxury vehicle levy did not even live for a full year. It died the next year in 2019, and they realized what the issues were, right? Because some cars that were supposed to be luxury cars with smaller engines were going to fall under this. Now, these days, the automakers are reducing engine capacity and they are doing twin turbo diesel, twin turbo petrol engines. Now, for those kind of engines, they can achieve more power with less displacement. Does that make them any less luxury or any less what emission heavy vehicles, right? So we really need to, as a nation, my recommendation is we need to sit down and do some proper work. First thing is, let's introduce this gradually, starting with major emitters before going to broader sectors. So instead of taking construction, manufacturing, mining, oil and gas, electricity, like pick, let's say, manufacturing. They have clear emissions, right? But instead of doing flat fees for everybody, because you can't say a mining company and a construction guy should all pay 100 cedis per ton per month. So instead of having flat fees, replace the flat fees with emission based charges. So you can tax the vehicles based on CO2 output and the industries based on energy efficiency. The problem Ghana will have is the measurement of these metrics here. For example, how do you measure emissions in Ghana? Like Ghana as a nation, are we ready to measure these things here? Right. Ideally, for the cars, we should have devices fitted that will measure what you have actually emitted during your drive during the year. We don't have those yet. So why do we have this tax? So right tax, poor design, wrong timing. Right. Then we should actually introduce incentives and exemptions. So offer tax credits and lower rates for businesses that adopt cleaner technology and renewable energy. So if you're a business using solar, you probably should not be paying something like this. Or because you use solar, we check your net pollution or your net zero contribution. We say, okay, actually, you use solar with slightly little emission, so don't pay at all. It will encourage people to actually move to solar. You see where I'm coming from? Like, policy is supposed to bring about change and not just raise revenues. Like, we just think, okay, implement this, make money from it. But why don't you say, okay, anyone who uses clean energy sources would not have to pay this levy for this number of years, or you pay a reduced amount, or you can prove that you have done this reduced level, you don't pay this levy. It is easier that way to get people to comply and people to buy into the idea, right? Then it shouldn't end there. There should be action. We should ring fence the levy proceeds and electric vehicle adoption, public transport improvement, and renewable energy projects. Don't forget, we are a country that has actually put in exemptions in our VAT law for electric vehicles used for public transport. When the Trotskys on our road, the ones that use petrol, we are not done sorting them out. You see, that's why I always say is like some policies are great, but look at the timing, like where you are as a nation to inform your policy. Are we ready for electric vehicles? The answer is no. Somebody is looking for electricity to charge their phone at 8:45 p.m. They can't be competing between phone and car to charge the car for tomorrow morning. Because now you want to go to work in the morning. You have doomsday from yesterday. You've not charged your car. Now you are home. Will you ask your friend, can I come and charge at your place and all of that? You see, we are not ready for the infrastructure is not there. But then again, right tax, poor design, wrong timing. Get the infrastructure right. Get out of the woods when it comes to electricity issues. When we have power to charge phones, watch TV, power the rice cooker and the fridge at home, then we can think of charging cars, right? So one step at a time, dear government of Ghana, I think we should think about this very well before we rush to implement anything EV related, right? Then the next is stakeholder engagement and economic readiness. They should speak to businesses, the public, talk, right? The youth will give you ideas. Business have better ideas, like you get good ideas. But understand there is international pressure for every country to appear environmentally conscious. So some of these moves are so that it looks like we are trying, right? But we need to have honest conversations and say, see, if we are not ready, let's just hold the bull by the horn and call it speed, right? So back to VAT, like I said earlier, I agree with almost everything here. But for VAT flat rate scheme, we need to maintain a very simplified VFRS regime. We can increase the rates, maybe have a unified 5%, and not have for retailers and not have for estate developers, just one unified regime, or maybe anybody below 500,000, right? Generally, should just do flat rate, something, right? That should work. But I'm all for scrapping the COVID levy, um, stopping all of that complexity with VAT. It made everything so nasty, right? Straight system, one VAT rate. If it's going to be 23%, we're okay with it. But we know it's 23% output, 23% deductible input. We are all good with this, right? I think that's something that is a welcome change. Then, like I said earlier, registration threshold should be 500,000 and above so that we don't bore very small businesses with complying with VAT generally, right? But then again, also improve compliance on other tax handles to make sure we don't lose any revenue from those sides as well. Then I'll come to my personal wish list. These were not in the budget, but they are so dear, and I really don't know why they are reluctant. The first one is capital allowance, right? So capital allowance, as we speak today, if you buy a vehicle and you're a business and the vehicle doesn't meet the definition of non-commercial vehicle, or it doesn't meet the definition of commercial vehicle rather, right? What is going to happen is you are limited to capitalizing 75,000. Technically, in plain and simple English, you can only write off 75,000 of the cost of the car against your profit. Now, let me ask all of us a question today. Can anybody type in the comments any, please listen carefully, any correct car you can buy for 75,000 today? Correct car. That's the emphasis. I'm not saying 2009 Toyota Corolla. No, like correct car. You know, the kind of when you were starting life afresh, you finish, you want to buy an Elantra. That was like the dream for many young men and women, right? Finish service, get some cool Corolla. Today, that cool Corolla is like 175,000. That cool Elantra, I've seen 190,000. RAV4 used to be people's starter pack. Today, RAV4 is like 350,000 generally. Like that is where Ghana is. So why is our law saying that only 75,000 can be deducted? Like who are we kidding? This should be increased. It's way, way, way overdue. It's unfair to businesses. It makes it look like if you buy the car for business purposes, we are punishing you for buying the car unless you meet some criteria, right? So if you're a business and you buy a nice SUV for your CEO, because he deserves, your CEO needs a nice SUV to go for meetings to win those contracts, right? But a CEO will only be restricted 75,000 capital allowance for that Land Cruiser or Lexus, right? Which doesn't make any sense looking at the realities today, right? So I think the government should look at this. I personally am recommending minimum 350,000 cities, 350. It will cover many standard cars. 75,000, you can't buy anything today. Nothing. Even Kia Morning, you will get 90,000 today. So like it's just um a little bit tricky here. Then the next one is personal reliefs. Since 2020, our personal reliefs have remained the same. Actually, from 2019 at 1007. So personal reliefs like for marriage responsibility. So child education, you get 600 Ghana cedis per child, up to a maximum of 3 children. Let me ask all of us here: 600 cedis per child. It's for a year. How much? Okay, I don't have a child yet. How much can 600 cedis or how many books for a year can 600 cedis buy? Let's be honest. It's almost as if government did not really care. But to be fair, it was worse than this before the 2019 review, to be fair. But I think it's time we look at this again, right? 600 cedis cannot buy anything today. It is somebody in this session's lunch for a week or even less. You're giving it to the person for a year as a relief of their child education. It is too low. It is unrealistic. And I think reliefs are supposed to have an incentivizing effect. What I mean by that is to incentivize people to comply. So you tell the person that, oh, if you file your return, I'll give you 2,000 cedis per child. Then they're like, oh, how do I file my return? But they hear 600 cedis, I'll not file. You get my point? So they should be made incentivizing enough. Let's look at an inflation adjustment from 2020 to 25, right? If nothing at all, minimum times three, all the reliefs. right? To at least bring them to realistic levels in line with today. Then the income tax stamp amount should be reviewed. If you look in the income tax regulations, there are quarterly amounts there for barbers, hairdressers, herbalists, those who operate discos, those who operate private buses and trotros. It will shock you to note that for many of them, what they pay in a quarter, they make in a day. Should I shock you? If you check the law and let's take a random, let's take a barber, right? So a barber will typically be in category B, right? Now, category B, guys, a large barber should pay 35 Ghana cedis per quarter. News flash, the barber in my area takes 65 cedis, new prices, per haircut. He's supposed to pay 35 cedis for a 3-month period. I mean, come on. You see, it's almost as if we cannot touch the informal sector in Ghana, unfortunately, right? Why does the barber pay 35 Ghana cedis per quarter? Fine, the argument can be these are taxes on account. They must file year end. But would they file year end? No, they will not. Many of them pay the quarterly ones and they think they are done, right? So if that is going to be the deal, please let's review the 35 cedis per quarter. It is too insulting. Even per month is still insulting. How much more per quarter, right? So a barber or the hairdressers, ladies here, those who charge you, I don't know how much, 500 cedis to fix your hair for you. They're only paying 35 cedis for the whole 3 months. They can use just your hair to pay like a full 3 years of their tax obligation, right? Doesn't make sense in the universe. So I think we need to review this properly, um, look at the amounts, increase them so that the informal sector contributes their fair share to taxes generally, right? Then I think what we need as a nation is also what I want to call inflation rate linked automatic adjustment, right? So we'll call them IRLAAs. So generally, what will happen is that we want governments to say, okay, so we don't amend our laws every time. We have certain amounts in the law that will change every year automatically by inflation. So all we'll do is there'll be an amendment that says, okay, if this particular rate of inflation is confirmed, apply this formula. So X plus 0 point something Y. So that every year there's no need to go back to parliament to say increases by that. So we do it for the personal reliefs. We can do it for the quarterly tax stamp for the small businesses and all of that, right? Then modified taxation. This one needs nothing to be done. The law is there. Second schedule of Act 896. It only needs implementation, right? Easier way to tax the informal sector, bring them into the tax net, and stop burdening the employees. It's almost like employees here are the ones always bearing the burden because our employers take from source, right? But we should do some work. And I think withholding tax also needs some simplification in the sense that we need to have automatic credit for withholding tax. I know people here, employers have deducted withholding tax. It's time to file their annual return and they don't have any credits against their Ghana card number or their TIN, right? So it's more like now you are owing GRA, but your employer has paid all your taxes. We need to find a way to get like legit. Once it's withheld against your TIN or your Ghana card number, you have that credit. So you file a return, your employer deducted PAYE is sitting there for you already. Then we should also eliminate like multiple withholding tax rates. Today we have 3% goods, 5% work, 7.5 services. Then they brought 3% realization, resident, 10% realization on resident. See, the rates are too many, right? There was an era where we had 5% and then that about it, right? That was okay. So we could look at that. Then we should simplify definitions or the scope. So by scope, for example, there's a 2,000 Ghana CD threshold. I think it's too low, to be fair, right? Once again, increase it. Free some people from having to do some things. Because don't forget, one of the canons of taxation is economy. It shouldn't cost you so much to collect the tax. So all those who are little contributors, leave them out and focus on the big fish. So let's check the definitions and the scope. Definitions such as some people confuse goods with services. Is it a good royalty? Somebody will ask you software, is it a good or is it a royalty? Is it a service, right? Simplify it. There can be one rate for goods, for works, for services. Everybody's life is easy and we don't stress with all of those technicalities. And then automatic credits. Then VAT exemptions review. I am a big believer in education. We should restore the exemption on imported textbooks. You see, we are a nation, we still import those who did science, the Abbott physics textbooks, and those books. The law students here, you import contract law books from outside Ghana, special books. Some books are not written in Ghana. Okay, fine. Let's see a Ghanaian write a book on quantum physics, or a Ghanaian write a book on generative AI. Those books are foreign. We will import them. But why are they not exempt? We should only do this when we have a perfect alternative in Ghana where Ghanaian authors can author all of those books. I don't think we are there yet. For the capacity, yes, we have Akiola, but Akiola is doing call maths, e-maths, like, yeah, but those are like the basics. We have some books that are really high level that are not Akiola level, and we still need foreign textbooks. So I think for education purposes, it is a very essential commodity. We should exempt them. And then domestic air travel, really, let's go back to exempting it. I don't see why we had to go back to making them vatable. And sanitary towels, instead of zero rating them for the locally made one, let's make all sanitary towels exempt, whether imported or locally made. I think it's an essential commodity for our ladies. There's no point playing politics with this. We don't make that much money from it anyways, right? So let's just exempt it from VAT. And everybody's life is easy, right? So this is my personal wish list. We will end here. I'll take any questions you may have. Hopefully, this kind of gave you some ideas. Looking forward to what the minister will say. So I'll pause here a few minutes. We can take any questions you may have. If not, we'll sign off. And yes. Okay, so I'll start with Abdurrafil, yeah. So you unmute and then you ask your question. Okay, I can't hear you. So Forsen.
Okay, thank you very much
Okay, your internet is disappointing you.
for the
Samuel,
presentation. I think when
go
the
ahead.
minister was presenting the budgets, the
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I can hear you.
hello,
Please go ahead.
but I wanted to find out on
Okay.
two areas for the existing entities who maybe for a reason met the threshold, but for any reason, let's say they've lost some contract or some customers have left their business, and for that reason, they've now come below the 200,000, gross revenue threshold, for which previously they were eligible to register as VAT, and now due to changes in their customer portfolio, they are no longer within that 200,000 threshold. If they need to go back to GRA to sort of unregister, let me use that term, what are the processes involved? And if the minister should now increase such that they move from the 200,000 to now 500,000 for already existing registered part agents, what will happen to them? I mean, will it be like they will all now be not registered again, or what happens to those who have
Okay. The law has
previously
clear,
qualified?
yeah, the law has clear provisions for cancellation of registration. You can read the VAT Act, Section 19, right, on cancellation. And tax laws are not applied retrospectively. So if a new threshold comes into force 1st April, it doesn't apply in previous months generally, right? So yeah, the law has clear provisions on how to cancel registration, how to deregister. So I think those are like minor details. You can just check the VAT Act, Section 19 to be specific, and the regulations obviously for it. All right. I'll take the next one I see here is Samuel Zanute. I can't hear you. You're muted. Okay.
Yeah, Mike. Hi.
Okay.
Yeah. So my question is, I actually like the wish list you had, specifically on the capital allowance for the vehicles and all. Is there a way? to reach out to. But I think when these things are spoken or maybe suggested to the minister and the right authorities, it will be heard. Maybe they have too many things to focus on. So these little ones that escape them. Is there a way to communicate with them? Because I was thinking of maybe sending a tweet even this evening and just tagging plenty times so that he will have knowledge of this. Is there a way? Is there an official way of communicating this?
Yeah, what I know is whatever it is, they know, they see. They know, they see. I can almost bet you whatever is happening here, somebody who knows somebody will say somebody said something and somebody. Yeah, they see everything, they know everything. They do the ones they want to do, right? But I think you've probably seen the MTRS, right? The medium tax revenue strategy document, right? If you check that, it kind of gives you an idea what they plan to do. It looks like the NDC is following the MTRS so far, right? So it kind of tells me very soon we will see some of these things I mentioned, some of them, right? It looks like. So as to if we should try and tag them on social media, they see, they hear, for sure, right? They will do it when they want to do it, or if it benefits them or meets some objective at that point in time for them. But for sure, I think they see everything that we say. They are on social media with us, I believe. Right. So yeah, that's it. Okay. Hudu?
Yeah, Michael, thank you. Mike. Yeah, mine is on the tax refund issues.
Yeah.
If I heard the minister right, I think he was
Yeah.
saying that in the past, government was going by the upper limit, which is a 6%. So it means in the past, government has been releasing 6% to GRE, and that
Okay.
out of this 6%, 43% of it was used for refund related issues, and then the remaining 47 was misapplied. So going forward, instead of giving GRA 6%, they will limit it to 4% so that they won't have much to misapply.
Okay, I heard that too. But then
Yeah,
my point is if the law told you to give up to 6
yeah,
and you chose to give 6 and now you are
yes,
saying you won't give 6, so you have more money to use. Okay, let's see how that plays out. I think
yeah.
that's what ended with that. Yeah, let's just see how all
How it works. Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Because I believe we are all in this country. If indeed, like, we'll get that new money in quotes, I think we'll all be here to see it. Right. Yeah. Okay. The next question I have here is Frederick.
Good evening, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thanks for a really good presentation. I really enjoyed it. Two things. I kind of remember hearing NOC CAPI allocation reduced to 15%. You didn't mention it, but I
Yeah.
probably missed it.
Yeah.
And then my other question relates to VAT. The fact that we are deferring the reworking of the VAT to the IMF working group. I'm a little bit skeptical about how soon we are going to get the corrections done. I'm just checking if you share my skepticism.
Yeah.
In terms of how long it will take for them to work it out, bearing in mind that they are a creditor and they are interested in our revenue generation in order to be able to, come good with our repayment schedule. Whether or not their interest will be to quickly do this, or it's going to be another lingering amendment till the year ends and then another review for next year. I'm just a little skeptical. I'm just checking.
Yeah. So the first one you mentioned was on the carried and participating interest, which is the NOC financing to GN. So what they want to do is to reduce how much must go to GNPC to obviously free up cash for other purposes. So I didn't touch on that because they were more like expenditure related matters, right? Like freeing up, in a way, revenue, right? Freeing up more cash to go to other areas, right? So that will lead to, at 815, we need an amendment, that is a PRMA, and then subsequent amendments as well. Earmarked funds, realignment, recapping legislation. So yes, that will be something that will see some changes, mainly to free up excess funds to other areas. They want to reallocate to other expenditure line items. And then for VAT, like you rightly mentioned, you cannot just cut a revenue handle. You should prove, if you are cutting, how do you plan to replace that revenue? So you probably have to compromise. Either VAT rate goes higher, but you can deduct input, so we don't lose revenue, but it becomes a simpler system. But something must give, right? So yes, that's why I think they want to sit down and discuss with the IMF so that they can get to a point where we don't lose revenue, because we are in a deficit position already, right? We don't want to make the deficit bigger, right? So I think that is what will eventually happen. But as to timelines, I know they'll start sometime next month. When it will end, I really don't have any idea. So let's see how it will play out. Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Absolutely enjoyed your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Nathaniel?
Yes, good evening, Mike. Thank you for the presentation. I actually didn't join you early enough on the network. So maybe I was looking at the minister's presentation of the budget, and I also looked at the
Yeah, go ahead. I can hear you.
deficit. Uh, Something was said about it, so it was just
You
was
don't know if
looking
something
at
was said.
the yes,
Which
because
one?
there was no clear plan to address that's the energy sector deficit.
Yeah, so they are going to do some restructuring for ESLA, right? Merging three of the funds, and SPL would have to find its own way. That is competition and pollution. So I touched on that during the session. So they kind of seem to have a plan to finance part of the debt, but I doubt that'll be enough to clear all arrears. So maybe they have other plans, but yeah, that's it. Right. Yeah.
Just a follow up. What about the stalled project of the previous government?
All the what?
Stalled projects of the previous government.
Stalled projects.
Yeah.
Okay, two things. Number one is outside the scope of this presentation. Number two, they would continue the ones they want to continue, as all governments have done, right? So if they really want to continue, they'll find the funds to do it. If they won't, they'll neglect it generally, right? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Emmanuel,
Hi, Michael. Good evening.
good evening.
My only concern was I'd wanted like clarity on the IPP's owings, if it could affect our, say, like electricity, since like we are owing them so much, and also if the government also didn't touch base with the PAYE schedule, like the
Okay.
task net for like for salaries for 2025. If like nothing, no amendment has been added to it.
Okay, all right. So once again, discussion on IPPs outside the scope of this discussion, but well, it's on tax measures, right? But we owe a lot. As to
Yeah.
if I are allowed to go off tomorrow, we pray not, but the government claims they have plans to settle the arrears. Probably they'll discuss with them to have a staggered payment plan, something, or earmark some funds for paying up. They'll figure it out, but it will be outside this forum for sure. For PAY attached to it, what they hinted was all amounts below or minimum wage and below will be zero rated as usual. So the nil tax band on the graduated rate would be changed to reflect the minimum wage for 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
mentioned during the
So how
program.
long is it going to take for it to take effect? Its effectiveness and like within the period.
As fast as the bills go to Parliament. So first and
Oh,
foremost,
okay.
we'll have to do some debates in Parliament. The Finance Committee will go through, bills will go to Parliament, first reading, second reading, third reading. It gets passed by Parliament, assented by President. So it depends on how fast all of this happens before it's gazetted, becomes law. Yeah, so if they want it really fast, it'll be very fast based on history. But let's be looking like maybe sometime. Let's see. But I can't tell for very fact. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And finally, can you also make copies available of your presentation slides to
For the,
us?
this, I'm very certain to be on YouTube slides. I'm still contemplating. I'll see if there's, because there are things in here I can't share
That's
or
fine.
here, so I'll see. But yeah,
All right.
for the
Okay.
recording, be on our YouTube channel, so for sure you get that one.
All right. Thanks so much for your time.
All right, thank you too. Gertrude.
Mike, thank you so much. I just want to mention something I heard this morning. We're talking about the extractive industry and the levies, the fact that it has to be negotiated. I think what the deputy finance minister mentioned was that he had negotiated with them. I mean, behind the scenes before passing the bill. So I believe that is something that will work. And again, we shouldn't forget. You mentioned that the word you used was it wasn't so fair to them. The CJ, the former CJ, who is now the
Yeah.
Council of States, she had mentioned that we have to look at our extractive laws very well because these companies are making so much money. So I think that we should watch the space. There might even be something more coming up in terms of getting more from the mining industries. So that's just what I wanted to ask.
Okay, thanks for that. And I also think if they try to do anything funny, we'll have a lot more arbitration cases, which Ghana will lose eventually if they try that. Because really, like once you promise someone stability, it's a little bit tricky to try to extract more money from them. But let's see, right? It has to be something where they meet the middle ground somewhere. But yeah, because of stability, it will be very difficult to try to pull more money out of their nostrils, literally. Right. Yeah. Okay, Mina. Mina. Okay, if Mina is not here, Redeemer.
Hi, Mike. Good evening.
Right, I'm here, but no question. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, good evening, Mike.
Yeah. And
I have you mentioned that some of the levies for the petrol and diesel have been consolidated, and interestingly, the SPL has been left out. Is that the case?
say that again.
SPL has been left out of the levies for petrol and diesel.
No, so
So,
SPL is going to join. So let me show you.
okay.
Yeah.
I
So
was hoping it's
SPL, energy sector recovery and energy debt recovery will become one. And
okay.
they'll use to pay energy sector shortfalls and inherited debt for energy sector. So my question was, SPL was earmarked for sanitation, pollution, air quality, drainage, gutter systems, generally. So like what money will now be used for that? That was my question. So that money will still be there, but they want to use to pay energy sector shortfall, inherited debt and all of that. Yeah.
Oh, right. So
Yeah.
I was hoping to see a reduction in fuel prices. I thought you said that has been taken out.
No, they didn't mention any increment or any reduction. Everything stays the same, no change rate, just like a restructuring of three of them. Everything else remains the same, according to the minister. But then again, let's see the bill. They might put in a very, they have a funny way of introducing some extra 1 peso in that bill, which will escape the public's eye. They can do that in the bill. But so far in the budget, he said no increments, no reduction, just a restructuring. So let's see how that pans out. Yeah.
Because interestingly, I wonder why levies like the price stabilization levy is still in there. Because as it stands, government is not subsidizing poor prices anymore. So I wonder why they're still taking it. Because they're not paying it to the BDs that import fuels anymore. So if they're
Yeah.
taking that levy, I wonder what it's being used for. It
Yes.
should be
Even
in there.
yeah,
What am I to
even
say?
in general, right? We need to look at this comprehensively and see if we really can't we find an alternative way to fund some of these things, right? Because transport prices going up affects inflation. It's a major like element in the basket of goods for determining inflation. So we need to can't we find alternative ways to fund like road construction, sanitation, pollution, electrification? But yeah, I mean, whole different conversation. So yeah, I think we need to relook at this very well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Darlington. Okay. Samuel, your hand is still up. New question, can go ahead. Or Abdul Rafiu. If not, I think we are done for today.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Abdul. Please, my question borders on the fact that the OECD, there's a certain OECD report which indicates that in sub-Saharan Africa or in Africa, the average tax to GDP ratio is around 16%. But when it comes to Ghana, we are working around 14 point something percent. I can't quite remember the exact figure, but we are around 14%, which is a little bit lesser than what we are doing or what the whole continent is doing on average. So, with the abolition of some of these taxes, how is the government going to show up or come up with new taxes so that we can match up with that of what the entire continent is doing? Even though we all don't like taxes, but it is taxes that is used to develop this country.
Okay, so two answers, possibly three. First one is that it's an average. Averages take into account so many variables, right? So OECD average can be distorted by a very high or low outlier. So yes, it's fair, but an average I'll really take with a grain of salt. Number two is that tax to GDP has two elements. There's a tax and there's a GDP. So if tax has a direct relationship with the ratio, GDP has an inverse relationship, right? So it depends, right? Really, we can move two handles generally to kind of like affect the ratio. So we can do more than just tax. We can grow, expand the economy, increase taxes, and things should just net off and work out on its own. But yes, as government is trying to cut some taxes, I think the general expectation is that they're going to pump money into 24-hour economy. People produce more, we export more, GDP or production expands, right? So I think they have looked at the bigger picture and maybe they have plans. I hope so, right? But yes, if you're looking at purely taxes, then if your tax revenue goes down, it should lead to all other things being equal, a lower T to GDP ratio. But like once again, let's see how these play out. And most of them don't have an immediate impact, right? They'll have like a lagging effect. So something happens, and later, before you see the impact in the ratio, right? So let's see how it plays out. That's what I would say, right? Yeah.
All right. And then again,
Yeah.
the tax refund account.
Yeah.
We are made to understand that any excesses that is after the year
Yeah.
is deposited into the consolidated fund.
Right. Yeah.
So what is the real impact when the minister says we are reducing the rate from 6% to 4%? If per my understanding or per my analogy, if indeed the excesses are misappropriated by some people, why don't we deal with the culprits rather than reducing the rate itself?
Yeah. So what it seems the minister said, I touched on this. What it seems the minister said was they are putting all six into the refund account. So they'll put less than six. But my point was that the law did not even force you to put six. It says not more than six. So you could have done four already, anyways, right? So it looks like they now want to do the four and save the two. And that gives them 3.8 billion. But then again, let's see. Let's see if we actually realize this 3.8 billion. And they are forgetting that there could be an increase in refunds because taxpayers become more knowledgeable. We have the Independent Tax Appeals Board. We want to litigate more, right? And then now 2% has been saved. I mean, things could go wrong here, but let's see. Once again, let's see how things go. I'm sure they've done their homework. So I'll just leave this little emoji here. Let's see how things play out. Yeah.
Okay, but during the minister's speech, I didn't hear, if maybe I wasn't seated at that time, I didn't hear anything concerning reduction of import duties. Please, did you hear that? And if so, how?
No. No.
Okay,
Import duty
okay,
reduction, no.
Okay.
I mean, there'll be
Thank you.
there'll be an effect. Yeah, there'll be an effect because it won't be on import duty though. If we take out the cascading effect on VAT, it will affect import VAT. So it won't have the cascading as in the way we do it now is we have you do your duties on CIF, you do levies on CIF and duty, you do your VAT on CIF plus duty plus levies. If they stop the cascading effect, it will be CIF plus duty plus a VAT rate. So we will see a corresponding decline in import bill, but that's about it. He didn't make a clear statement on duties themselves going down because that is tied to the HS code, which hasn't seen a change, right? Yeah.
Okay. This is indeed my first time of listening to you or joining you in this session. And a friend recommended it to me, Mr. Solomon Gamma, a colleague of mine. But
Okay.
what I would like to request from you is if you can organize one session like this and then explain or give us options how to not tax the few people that are in the tax bracket too much, but rather how we can expand the tax brackets so that more people or more citizens of this country will be captured. I think that would be fantastic, per my view. Thank you very
Okay, let me
much.
make a counter proposal to you. It takes a lot of work to put all of these together. Guarantee me a meeting with the Minister of Finance. Guaranteed. Like meeting. And I'll put that presentation together. Because I don't want to do it and then it will just be like it will be on YouTube and then we'll all be watching and never gets acted on, right? If you can guarantee me like a meeting with someone up above, yeah, I can speak with colleagues who put together like a solid proposal and then we can share with the minister. So counter proposal, if you can do that for us, I'll be more than happy to put in the work because it takes a lot of work to do these things. Yeah. Okay. I hope that answers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Hi, Michael. Good evening.
Okay. Michael, yeah.
Michael, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for a nice presentation. I really enjoyed the very few moments I joined. I think this is my first time joining, and I think I've been able to learn one or two things as a new person in the system. But then I wanted to ask a question
Okay.
around the new personal income tax review for the minimum wage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to know hear much about that. What the finance
Generally,
minister said about that.
yeah, he's just going to do what happens almost every year. Anybody who earns below minimum wage, we try to adjust the tax band to make sure they don't pay income tax, 0%. So it's something that happens like literally every year. We're going to say that will be done again, right? So yeah, it's just like we'll increase the lower threshold band to meet minimum wage. That's all we do every year. So yeah, it will be done again this year. Yeah.
Okay. How about the non-taxable revenue?
What do you mean by non-taxable revenue?
Yeah, so I in the presentation I heard you saying the NTR laws amendment. They're going to
So
amend.
not tax revenue. Okay. So let me not make it another lecture. In summary, when you pick the government of Ghana's revenue lines, central government, right, you see a line called tax revenue, broken down into like direct and indirect taxes. Then we have non-tax revenue. So that's where you see things like, I think you're like, I'm muting you. Okay, that's when you see things like these other things that are not taxes. So, for example, if government decides to export any of our output, we make money from it. It's non-tax revenue, right? If government has property rate that may not qualify as taxes, it is non-tax revenue. So they are saying that they're going to look at a comprehensive policy. Even when we sell some state-owned assets, we make some gains from that sale. It is not a tax revenue, it's non-tax. They are saying they want to have a comprehensive policy to cover those NTRs. But back to what I was saying, then apart from your non-tax revenue, you have something called grants. So we can get grants from other bilateral or multilateral organizations, right? So generally, yes, and other income sources as well. So non-tax revenues are like one revenue line of the government of Ghana. They want to just have an increased focus on boosting that entire line. That's the whole thing in summary, right? But there are other lines that we have, like I just mentioned. All right.
All
More
right.
questions.
All right. I want to ask one last question, but that is not related to what we discussed today.
Okay.
I wanted to ask if there is any law in Ghana that says maybe soldiers um, are free not to pay import duties.
Soldiers are free not to pay import duty. So let me make your life easy, right? The way taxes work, we don't have like a special tax law for soldiers. So there is a Customs Act. It deals with all matters of customs. Now, because customs works hand in hand with some other items like the Africa Union Import Levy, like the ECOWAS levy, like the National Health Insurance Levy, VAT, Get Fund Levy, and the soon to die COVID levy. All of them will meet at one particular forum and agree that, okay, Customs Act, be our leader. So generally, if they want to exempt soldiers, then it has to be by law. So first thing is that we don't have like a special law for soldiers, right? Now, the Customs Act has so many amendments, so many exemptions. There are some items that are exempt for special classes of people. So for example, office of the president, some imports will not attract import duty, right? I cannot confirm for a fact that all soldiers, unless it's a special concession they have. But to the best of my knowledge, there's no special, any soldier can import anything. No. A soldier is an individual Ghanaian citizen subject to the laws of Ghana, right? So look at the general law governing all imports and see if they provide a special exemption for that particular class of person. And the answer is no, right? But if there are any special concessions for maybe some things for army men, then yes, they may get exemptions from that. But it's not like a general sweeping exemption for all military men. No, it doesn't. Right? Yeah. Last question, then we have to close. So I'll choose between Eno Sewa. Okay, Bismarck. All right. So if there are no questions, I think we can end here. We've exceeded the time I planned for us to have. Hopefully, this kind of gave us some ideas. Hopefully, was an interesting discussion. Hopefully, we have some idea what the finance minister spoke about, and we left here more knowledgeable than we came here. This will be uploaded on our YouTube channels, like I mentioned earlier. So probably post on social media once the upload is done. So thanks for coming, and it was nice having all of you. I look forward to seeing you
Hi,
at our
Michael.
webinar. So have a good
Hi,
night, everyone.
Michael.
Good night, Abdul Rafiu. What's the question here? Go
Hi,
ahead.
Michael. I just no, it's not a question. I just want to make a suggestion. Would you be kind to organize such an event if the bill or the statement is passed, the budget is passed by Parliament?
I'll think about it. All right. So have a good night, everyone, and I will see you during our next session. Good night.